Hi, I'm Alex Lamb, author of the Roboteer science fiction novels, and you're watching Secrets of the Universe, the thrilling, exciting video series in which I attempt to explain all of the things. Not that I'm an expert on all of the things, I'm certainly not, far from it, but I've tried to learn some things about all of the things. In actual fact, I don't seem to be able to stop myself from trying to learn things about all of the things. So this is my attempt to try to share what I think I've discovered and hopefully improve myself in the process. What would I like to talk to you about today? Well, today I'd like to talk to you about an exciting thing I made up, and that's niche exhausters. What is a niche exhauster? There's no reason you should know because I did make it up. You might have heard of something called a niche constructor, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk about what that is first before we get into niche exhausters. A wonderful example of a niche constructor is a hermit crab. I've got a friend who's a biologist, Mark Lydra, a fantastic human being, and he studies these kinds of things. He studies hermit crabs and niche construction and the like. So basically the interesting thing about hermit crabs is that hermit crabs don't leave their environment alone. Hermit crabs get shells that have been left by other species, and what they then do is they change the shells on the inside. If you like, they construct their own niche. So they get a shell and they make the shell nicer to live in, and then they live inside that shell until it gets too small, and then they trade up. But of course, what hermit crabs know is that shells that have been prepped by other hermit crabs are far more valuable to live in than ones that haven't been prepped. So it's a buttload of work to prep a shell, as it turns out. So when one crab on the beach is out there swapping up its shell, other hermit crabs will tend to notice and go, oh my goodness, look, there's some free housing. So they will tend to rush out and attempt to grab the shell that has just been relinquished. So you can get these housing chains of hermit crabs all in parallel trying to basically get somebody else's shell, and you end up getting this mayhem that looks very much like a human housing market. And if you've ever been in a chain with a house, yeah, that thing, gazumping, if you're lucky enough to have done it in Britain. Hooray for that. Anyway, enough terrifying memories of the past. Moving swiftly onwards, the idea of that's niche construction. So that's an interesting kind of creature. It does, here is a creature, it evolves its own environment, and that has interesting, sometimes social consequences. So people have looked at the human race and they've sort of said, well, is the human race a niche constructor? Certainly we don't leave our environment alone. Now, I would propose that the human race is actually different. It's something like a niche constructor, but it's this other thing that I've invented, a niche exhauster. And what I mean there is that we have this extraordinary capacity, intelligence. We do something really interesting with niches. We come into an environment, we look at it, we take stock, and then we basically game out the behavior of pretty much every organism that's in that particular niche. So we adapt to the shape of what's happening with the various plants to provide us with food. Historically, what humanity seems to have done is executed pretty much all of the megafauna, either by eating it or murdering it because it's a threat. And then we basically we essentially change everything, including the entire landscape, and indeed build, towns or huts or whatever it is that at a particular stage of development that we happen to be at. So we essentially take that entire niche and then we change it. But at the point at which we've run out of, say, mammoths, we stop eating mammoths and then we go look for something else. We've exhausted that piece of the niche and then we adapt and then we move on, which is how come human beings spread across the entire planet like wildfire. We didn't have one niche. We were the ultimate invasive species. We achieved something incredible, which is we've basically galloped across the entire planet. But there's a paradox lurking in here. There's something really strange and sinister about this, which is, think about what a niche exhauster is. A niche exhauster comes into their environment, or an environment, figures out how it works, and then basically, in the process of gaming the ever-living crap out of everything that's there, and basically claiming everything that it can and expanding to fill all of the available space, you have to ask, up to the point at which that niche no longer functions in the same way. That entire environment, that mini piece of biome, if you like, has changed state, which hermit crabs don't do. When we do that, there's a paradox. How do you evolve a species that does this? How do you possibly get there? You can't evolve a species that basically destroys its niche. How do you evolve the intelligence that enables you to do this in the first place? Evolution takes millions of years. So if you have a species that you evolve that just gets smart enough, just a little bit smart enough to exhaust its own niche, what happens is it exhausts its niche, it gets to the next niche, and not yet smart enough to know how to exhaust that one. So they die, they all drop dead. So therein lies the rub. How did we get here? How do you get an intelligent species that's capable of gaming out a bunch of different environments? And there are all these clues in our body. For instance, you can look at the clues latent in the nose. As it turns out, the human nose is one of the best noses in the animal kingdom. We have the belief that we actually have a terrible nose. It's like, oh, my dog Spot, he's got a proper nose. That's a nose. My nose is rubbish. I can't tell what I'm doing. We believe this because our nose is designed for something different. The nose of something like a dog or a cat is designed for detecting odors that are out there in the environment. However, the human nose is designed for what's called retronasal detection or tasting or what have you. We put something in our mouths and then we discover what it really smells like. We're like, here's a plant. That's disgusting. And then we spit it out and we're like, well, let's try that piece of bison or some such thing. The idea is that the human whole facial construction, our flat nose, our faces, all of this stuff is designed to enable us to sample new foods that we haven't had before and to be able to calibrate and assess the likely properties of it and whether or not it's going to probably murder us. We are the best tasters, arguably, on the planet because we've got the only noses that are designed for niche exhaustion. We've got noses which are designed for continually consuming a supply of new foodstuffs for which we don't have prior knowledge or expertise. That is itself a fascinating thing. There's also our teeth. Our teeth appear to be designed for the consumption of food that meat specifically, but meat that has been burned. So we're kind of like predators, but predators that are supposed to cook our food first. How do you evolve that? And the answer is human beings appear to have traveled around in the early phases with fire. And I think this is part of the giant clue. There's another very popular theory when it comes to the evolution of early humans that suggests that there's a lot of physical properties we have which suggest that we were living near the sea, or that we had to basically sort of dive into the water from time to time and do a bunch of sort of highly coastal kind of behaviors. Also probably true because I think that the key to how you evolve a niche exhauster is you've got to take a species and drive it to near extinction a whole bunch of times in a row. Not just once or twice. You have a species and then you basically pound it out almost to the point at which there's just a few left, and then you let them expand, and then you blast them again, and then you let them go back, and it's like, get ready for the backhand, and then you nearly wipe them out again. And this is how you get a niche exhauster, ladies and gents, by having a species that is evolving in circumstances where there is never a stable niche. That's how you get intelligence. That's how you get the human race, by basically constantly tugging the rug. We must have lived in an environment, I propose, in which there were a great number of environmental shocks that were constantly coming this way and that. And if you want the last cool clue to this particular pattern, it's in our DNA. If you trace back our DNA and basically look, there appears to be evidence that at least once, if not multiple times, we expanded as a species from a single female. One female left that then ended up having kids, and then we expand out from that. Remarkable. So that would seem to be another circumstantial indicator that this niche exhauster idea is right. So Why are we as good at doing what we do? Well, because we had to be. Because all other means of existence were shut down. And I think this is probably, we talked about the Fermi paradox in another video, I think this is why intelligent life is really likely to be rare, because having a species that's already big enough that it might really develop, a lot of intelligence, a lot of tool use, you have to have a creature that's a good candidate, and then you have to beat it solidly around the face and neck with an evolutionary baseball bat for about 10 million years in order to get the catalyzing effect that then really precipitates the boost into full social intelligence. And that leads us on to also the exciting question of things like group selection and stuff like that, which we'll try and talk about in another video because I'm already run out of time. Anyway, you get the idea, ladies and gents. Niche exhausters. Ooh! Any opinions or thoughts about the idea? Please leave them in the comments. I want to hear all and every single thing that you have to say. Thank you for listening and watching. Next time, something else.